standing in the way of what I dream for. How could you ignore the ones that are voiceless, scream from the poor? They only here to score. I do it for the underground kings that don't need more. I'm kicking down your door. If I wonder why you got a pocket full of green for, it's all about...
Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with another episode of Regiment of Renown. This is a series that was dedicated to the building, assembling, and painting of our studio's 3,000 point Dogs of War army. And as you can see, the project is now fully completed. All 3,000 points of Dogs of War, actually 3,000 plus points of Dogs of War, have been assembled, have been painted, and is now ready to go onto the tabletop. So, this video is kind of a bittersweet video for me, I will admit on that one, and the reason why is for two reasons. The first one, I'm all fully completed with this Dogs of War project, so that's one reason why it's kind of sad. I mean, this army took me a while to paint. It was really fun to paint as well, extremely colorful. I liked a lot of the things I did with this army, so I was really happy with the end result. And at the same time, the second reason why it's bittersweet is because this will be the last Warhammer Fantasy battle army that I think I will actually put together. The reason why that is the case is because I have 16 armies in the studio's collection, which is a lot of armies. I'm not even going to lie about how many armies that actually is. I pretty much have a majority of the armies from the Warhammer Fantasy setting, including the Dogs of War. So, I mean, unless I'm collecting Tomb Kings, which I already have an undead army, so why would I do that? Or Skaven, and why, Skaven are cool and all, but I really don't feel like painting another Horde army of Skaven. I pretty much have everything that you could possibly need for a game of Warhammer, and so that's why, yeah. Unless, of course, something brand spanking new comes out from Warhammer the Old World, like Cathay or Hobgoblins or some other faction that's never been made before. But maybe even then, maybe not even then, I might not collect another army. It just kind of depends on the situation. But yeah, I've been in this hobby for a very long time now, and 16 armies seems about all I basically need. And so because of that, I won't be painting any more Warhammer armies anymore. This is the very last one that I'll be doing for Warhammer Fantasy. Now, I will, of course, do other projects as time goes on, like Necromunda and stuff like that, or even Mordheim. In fact, my next project actually is going to be painting some Mordheim warbands, because my friends are actually thinking about doing Mordheim again. But for the most part, though, I think this is going to be the very last Warhammer army that I actually paint. So that's why it's kind of bittersweet, because it's kind of like saying an end to an era on that one. So I've pretty much painted up actually not pretty much, I have painted every army that I've collected for Warhammer Fantasy. They're all fully completed now, so it's kind of like, I don't know, one milestone done. So it's actually kind of cool. So in this video, we will talk about the army's contents. We will also talk about its design elements. We'll talk about the color schemes and talk about exactly how we put this army together. So that being said, let's get this video on a roll. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the army's contents real quick. So for core units, we have 2 units of handgunners. This unit is known as Lucchini Rifles. It is a unit of 20 handgunners. I then have a second unit of 20 handgunners called the Varenzo Gunners. That's another unit of 20 handgunners as well. Continuing on for core, I do have a Regiment of Renown, which is known as Perazzo's Lost Legion. It is a unit of 30 pikemen. 18 of these guys will be pikemen, 12 of them will be crossbowmen. It is a Regiment of Renown. It's also a core unit as well. It's also a mixed unit. The first 2 ranks are crossbowmen, while the rest of the ranks are made up of pikemen. So that makes up my other core requirement as well. And then back over here, I have a unit of 3 Stadiotes. These are my light cavalry guys called the Thugs of Tabaro, and there are 5 of those guys as well. Now, as for what the core choices came from, these actually is a combination of Warhammer Fantasy as well as pike and shot miniatures, is where a lot of the handgunners and well as the pikemen came from. Pike and Shock is made by a game called Warlord Games. It's about the 30 years war period, Renaissance era of English Civil War, 30 years war, that time period, where firearms were starting to become used and pikes were still being used quite a bit in close combat. So that's where these guys mainly came from. And these 5 Stradiotes are exactly the same thing. They're just normal light cavalry guys. If they look familiar, the same pike and shot miniatures I used for my Bretonnian army for my yeomen. That's where those guys came from. And of course, the color schemes, I just want to go with this kind of interesting color scheme. As you guys know on this channel, I'm a huge fan of bright, bold colors for my armies. And so when I paint up this army, I decided to do exactly the same thing. So I went with this turquoise and blue kind of paint scheme for the Varenzo Gunners with highlights of yellow as well as red to create contrasting colors. I also use browns and tans to contrast all the leather goods with these guys to make it look really pop and make it look really interesting. For the Renzo Gunners, I was actually inspired by the paint job that I used for the Bogenhofen Barons, which is a Blood Bowl team of Imperial Nobility for Games Workshop's Blood Bowl. They have a lot of cream and pink as well as brown leather goods on them and black leather goods. And I thought that looked really, really awesome. I really liked the way that color scheme came out. So for Lucchini rifles, that's what I decided to do. I used different shades of pink, magenta, cream, and black for all the cloth. The brown and black leather elements also contrast nicely. Same thing with the green for the sashes and things that they have crossing their chests. I used palm leaf green for that. And that's pretty much when I came up with the design concept for those guys. Now, as for the Perazzo's Lost Legion, these guys are primarily different shades of green. And the reason why I use different shades of greens for these guys is because in the lore of Perazzo's Lost Legion, green and brown are their colors. So, of course, all the leather elements are in different shades of brown with different shades of green for their uniforms. I did this kind of quadrant kind of color scheme where like one sleeve and then the diagonal leg would be the same color while the opposing leg and opposing arm would be a different color as well. Pretty much did individual paint jobs for all those infantry units that I've done, so that way each guy has the same theme, but not necessarily the same uniform. It took forever to paint to do that because of that, but at the end, I really like that end result. It looks really, really neat. Looks like these guys are definitely like mercenaries, just kind of like got like lumped together to make their units. So I'm really happy the way those guys came out. Really, really happy at the end result of that. And then, of course, for the Stratiotes, I painted these guys orange. Just thought I'd think that orange would be a cool color to use for their overcoats. I use that turquoise color as a contrasting color because it contrasts nicely with their uniforms. And then, of course, painted the horses different colors to make it look more organic. So that part was really epic as well. So those are the core choices in this army. Now let's talk about the special choices real quick. So for my first special choice, I have the Golden Company, which is a huge horde formation of Paymaster's bodyguards. Now, the neat thing about this army is that because of the variety of miniatures are in it, I can kind of pick and choose what I want to put in there, whether I want to put special characters or not put special characters. It's pretty much up to me how I want to do it. This ogre here, for example, is going to be the Paymaster's cart in my army. It's going to be used as both the Paymaster's cart as well as his bodyguards, just because I thought it'd be kind of cool, have an ogre protect your pay chest. I also have my Gotrek and Felix special characters here as well. I could use them as special characters, or I could just use them as general mercenaries. That's a nice thing about a Dogs of War army. Now, my general here is the Garlock Black Powder miniature from Games Workshop's Warhammer Underworlds. In my local gaming store, there was a big group of people that used to play this game, but then I guess they just kind of fell apart and stopped playing it. So there's one guy was trying to offload a lot of Warhammer Underworld stuff. And I was able to get the miniatures for a song because I got to pick and choose what miniatures I wanted. I wasn't interested in the game at all, so I didn't buy in the cards. So I just bought the miniatures instead. So this guy is kind of like a combination of a general as well as a unit filler. Kind of put him on a big 60 by 60 millimeter block. That way he kind of eats up a large chunk of the unit as well because of that huge base size he has. They also have my wizard over here as well. I got two wizards in this army, one over here and one over here. I could also use these guys as paymaster and a wizard if I want to. I could also use this guy as a mercenary general if I want to. That's an imperial guy. And of course, the rest of my mercenaries are made primarily of free company militia guys from Warhammer Fantasy as well. And I painted these guys up in different shades of blue and yellow with red because they're supposed to be originally, most of them were from my Marienburger mercenaries that I used from my Mordheim army, Warhammer Warband, when I played Mordheim. So I just kind of kept that same color scheme throughout these guys as well. Now, for more astute viewers, you might have noticed that there's a lot of guys in green uniforms in here that are originally part of Perazzo's Lost Legion. I have played a couple of games with this army already, and originally I had a huge formation of Perazzo's Lost Legion, but they weren't doing as well as I thought they would in the game, so I had to rechange up my army a little bit. So I decided to put more points in my mercenary Paymaster's bodyguards. So I took some of these guys from the Perazzo's Lost Legion and put them in here and intermixed them a little bit. And even though the colors do kind of clash a little bit, I don't care. I'm a cheapskate, so I'll learn to live with the different color schemes involved with these guys. But yeah, most of these are actually militia, free militia mercenary miniatures from Games Workshop. And overall, just really like the way that these guys look. They look really, really awesome. Now, for my next special choice, I have this unit over here, which is Mordini's Nightmare Legion. Originally, I was going to use them as the Cursed Company, but as I was playing with it, like I said, I played a couple games with this army up to this point. They weren't doing very well, so I replaced them with Mordini's Nightmare Legion, which have heavy armor as well as halberds. They've been performing much better, so I've been taking a unit of these 30 guys as well. Now, you guys have seen these before. We did a video about how to paint these guys up with the ethereal paint color scheme. They're led by the Tomb King, Tomb White over here. That's from Games Workshop. Managed to get that guy for a pretty good price, and the rest of them, of course, are Kings of War skeletons. Did this ethereal paint job to make them look really, really cool in comparison to the rest of the army, so that part is really nice. With that alternating blue and green kind of ethereal look. Really happy with the way those guys came out, so that's another Regiment of Renown in this army as well. And then, of course, now that we're done with our special choices, let's talk about our rare choices. So, in the back, this unit here is Bronzino's Galloper Guns. This is another Regiment of Renown, and we talked about these guys in the last video that I did. It consists of 2 cannons from Games Workshop and Milton Bradley's Battle Masters. These 2 cannons are actually kind of a smaller scale than the normal Great Cannon for Warhammer Fantasy, which I thought would make it perfect for horse-drawn artillery, which Bronzino's Galloper Guns are. Now, I do have my 2 horses. These are actually unicorn miniatures from Reaper's Mini that I bought from my local game store. I just cut off the horns and used them to make the horses. And of course, I have some 2 spare Imperial artillerymen that I use to make up the last members of the crew. And then, of course, I have this Empire, I believe it was an Empire General Captain or General kit from 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy. I had a spare Battlemaster horse that was barred as well, so I mounted that guy on that. And he's Bronzino, and these are his Galloper Guns. Now, the color scheme I used for these guys were based off of the old color scheme that I used to use for my Empire army in my Schwarzwald Free Companies. This cannon crew right here was originally from the Schwarzwald Free Companies, but as you can see, I kind of updated the paint job. I added some gold and some bronze and copper elements to it. I did exactly the same thing with the other cannon as well. I also touched up their paint job a little bit because I'm a much better painter now than I was then when I actually painted these guys up. Stuck with that yellow and black color scheme because I thought it looked really, really cool, and then just did an oil wash on these guys and made them look like the rest of the army, which makes it look really awesome as well. Now, these units are actually pretty cool because they can do vanguard movements, they can use Swiss stride, and they can also fire counter cannons too, which is really nice. And then continuing on with my rare choices, I have a Revolt as well as a Great Cannon for this army. This is La Agonia, which is my Great Cannon. Now, this one should look familiar to you guys. This is from my Dwarf army. Originally, I had 4 war machines in the Dwarf army, and I painted up a spare flame cannon that I got. It was like a cheap pewter model I picked up from like Hobbytown, USA, I think. Hobbytown, USA, in the area that I live in, used to have like this bucket of like spare pewter miniatures that you could buy for $1.50 when I was younger, and I thought that was a great deal. So I just bought a bunch of stuff like that because even when I was a kid getting this hobby, I was a cheapskate. And one of them was this cannon that had no wheels on it, so I just bought it, and I just kind of been collecting dust in my studio's collection for the longest time. And I originally painted up to be in the Dwarf army originally, but the problem with that Dwarf army is that we don't use the flame cannon at all because the flame cannons are not all that great. So we decided to use it as a great cannon for our army as well. Since it's a Dogs of War army, there could be dwarves, mercenary dwarves, operating this cannon, and that's exactly what we have. We also have this little monkey, which is called the Powder Monkey, that came, I forgot which unit had it with it as a mascot, and I just used that as the 3rd crewman. So you can just imagine like this little trained monkey runs and loads the cannon while the dwarves step back and blast with it. And if you'll notice, the Revolt is actually the old Hellblaster volley gun that I used to have in my Empire army. This originally was the original Blitzen model that I originally had. The only problem though is that on a size scale, it's actually quite small compared to the 8th edition Hellblaster volley gun that came out later. I was able to get that box set. I was able to get a Hellblaster volley gun as well as a Great Cannon, I believe, pretty cheap a couple of years ago from my local game store. This guy was selling them secondhand. And so I bought both of those, and I decided to use that cannon and that Hellblaster volley gun to use for my Empire army. And I took the old Empire army's Hellblaster volley gun, which was Blitzen and Donner, and used it for my Dogs of War army instead. So this is the Blitzen miniature. I did touch up the paint scheme a little bit. If I don't know if you guys can tell, originally the paint scheme was actually quite basic on the gun. But since I got better at painting, I decided to jazz up a little bit with adding more gold and copper metallic elements to it as well. I also touched the paint job on the actual crew members as well. Did an oil wash on it and did a beautiful job finishing it up. And so now the Blitzen, the old Blitzen miniature now is La Estasi, which is my Revolt, Mercenary Revolt, which is basically the same thing. It's an Oregon gun. So that pretty much makes up the special rare choices that I have. Now the last unit that I've added to this unit was army, which is this one right here, my Piste de Resistance. That is Golfag's Man-Eaters. This is a unit of 8 mercenary ogre Man-Eaters that I use for this army, and this is the last addition that I made to this army as well. Now, the nice thing about these guys, I could just use them as normal mercenary ogres, I could use them as ogre man-eaters, I could use them as Golfag man-eaters. I mean, there's pretty much anything I could use these guys for, I could pretty much use it. Now, you'll notice the miniatures are actually quite eclectic because these are just the leftover ogre miniatures that I had in my army. First of all, Golfag Maneater. For the Legion of the Hellmouth, which is the studio's army, we never really used Golfag Maneater too much. There's no need to, so that even though that miniature was cool, it was collecting dust, not doing much of anything. So I decided to repurpose him for my Dogs of War army as well. You'll notice I also have a couple of ogres that are just spare ogres from like the from the Iron Guts, as well as the Bellowers kits, and I just jazz them up a little bit. So like this one here, for example, is an Iron Gut, leftover Iron Gut, and I put some shields on him, and I gave him double Iron Fist just to make it look like he was a brawler, and put some shields on his shoulder to make him look really cool. This Maneater back over here is another Ogre Iron Gut, I believe, or it could be just General Ogre, but I took some spare Mornfang Cavalry pieces, like the helmet and the pistols, and gave this guy, make him look like a gunslinger. And same thing with this Ogre. I believe that's an Ogre Bull that I left over. I gave him the head of an Iron Gut, so that way it has that cool looking mask. And I took that great weapon from the Mornfang and then put it on his hands there to make him look different as well. And that's how I went about painting up those guys. This guy also has like an interesting color scheme as well. He's got blue and red for his trousers. We have orange and black for the gunslinger, and blue and yellow for the guy armed with a double-handed weapon. At the same time, with that unit as well, I had Golfag Maneater. All I had to do with him, of course, is change his base to this green base, so that was very easy. And then I also had a spare ogre from the game Battle Masters. So it was a very large ogre miniature, so I just painted him up real quick, gave him a teal color for his clothing, and then decided to add him as a member of the ogres as well. And then these last two ogres are actually from Reaper Minis. These are actually giantesses. I believe this is a frost giantess, I believe is what she is. She's a frost giantess. And the one in the back is a fire giantess, I believe is what they are. I'm not sure what they are called. I don't really play Dungeons & Dragons all that often, so I'm not really sure what race they're supposed to be, but I just love the way the sculpts look, and the fact that they're also female giants were also kind of cool too. I thought we kind of need to have female ogres in my army, so I decided to buy them. And plus, you can't beat the price. They're both $3 a piece in my local game store. So for $6, I bought 2 ogres, something that I would have to spend $40 on for Games Workshop if I want to buy man-eaters, maybe $100 on. I'm not sure what the prices are, but either way, I bought them, so they look really cool. So this one looks really neat. Painted her skin blue to make her look like a frost giant, and she has all that leather and fur that she wears for her. Makes her look really, really cool. And it's kind of neat because she's also bigger than the rest of the ogres, but that's fine. Just represent the fact that she is eating more protein and much stronger. And then the fire giantess as well, I did a lot of metallic color schemes for her. Alternated a lot between silvers, gold, coppers, and bronzes to make her armor look really awesome. I painted her skin a jet black color because I was looking on images about how to paint a fire giantess, and a lot of them are actually showing like this kind of coal black colored skin, and I thought that looked really awesome. I thought that jet black skin color contrasted nicely with the metallics, as well as a fiery orange of her hair, so I decided to use that to make up this miniature. And I was really impressed how it ended with that one. The orangish red yellowish hair with the yellow dry brushing on it makes it look like her hair is on fire, which looks really cool as well. All right, if you also want to know what the movement bases are on these, the movement trays are actually just backing board from like photography as well as painting for framing shops at my local Hobby Lobby. I got those and I use those in order to paint up to make the bases of the movement trays, and then I just use fun foam in order to create the edges of it. I then covered the fun foam in wood glue to seal it, dusted with sand and wood glue, and painted it, dry brushed it, and that's what I made the movement trays out of. So they're very, very light and very flexible, but at the same time, rigid enough to actually hold the miniatures as well. And that's how I went about creating this army. So yeah, it's fully completed, fully painted up. I've already played a couple of games already with ahead of time before I was finished with my ogres. But now that I'm done painting it up, pretty much what the army is going to look like now is my unit of Painmaster's Bodyguards, my 2 units of Handgunners. I have a unit of Mordini's Nightmare Legion, Mercenary Man-Eaters, Perazzo's Lost Legion, Stratiotes, as well as a cannon and a revolt. And if I get into larger armies or larger point values, I can throw in Bronzino's Galloper guns or switch it up if I want to. But yeah, this is pretty much the army on this one. And that pretty much makes up the contents of my army. All right, you guys, so there you go. There you have it. This makes up the very last Warhammer Armies project that I'll probably do for my army with Warhammer Fantasy. These are the Miragliano Mercenaries, my army, 3,000 plus point army of Dogs of War for Warhammer Fantasy. This will probably be the very last army I actually put together for Warhammer Fantasy. I pretty much covered the entire scope and sequence of Warhammer Fantasy. pretty much. I don't really need anything else, really. If I want to experiment with other things, I could just put them together from my current collection. And so for the most part, this is it. This is what's going to be it. My very last army. Kind of a bittersweet moment, but at the same time, though, very satisfying as well. I'm finally done with everything in the collection. So took a long time to do on this channel's history, but it's all done now. And now it's just all about working now. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens when Warhammer the Old World drops. Hopefully they do a good job with the game. I'm kind of excited for it, but I'm also kind of nervous too because I'm not sure how they're going to do it. But either way, though, I will have armies for both systems. So Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition or 9th edition for Warhammer Army Project. And technically speaking, also Warhammer the Old World too. So I actually have armies for 3 gaming systems I want. So that part's kind of nice. And if I want a one-page rule, I could do it that way too. So actually 4. So got plenty of games I can play with this army regardless of what turns out. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to this channel. I am Commander Chiefskate. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. Peace out and stay classy.